Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another video. Well, several of you have asked in different forums about maybe a driving reaction video after the K24 conversion was put into the Vanagon. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I've just been out driving around. I've got a GoPro mount there on the windshield. I'm hoping that this thing will stay put and that you can actually hear me. I've got the window rolled down. It's a pretty hot day here, August, southeast United States in Georgia. I don't have the air conditioning hooked up yet. That's something about the conversion that I don't think I've addressed yet here on the channel. But the air conditioning system will have to be rebuilt. It was originally on an R12 refrigerant with the water boxer. It will need to be converted to R134A. I've got the air conditioning compressor. I've got a new condenser. I'm going to have to make all new lines, have new connectors and things like that. So anyway, I'm sitting in the sun side of things. It's afternoon. I am roasting right now. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to fire this thing up. As I've mentioned in the previous video, key start or key on, the tach sweeps, the fuel pump pressurizes. So we'll give that a few moments here. You can hear that fuel pump prime. And because I've been out driving it, it flares a little bit up toward 2000, but it comes right back down. We're sitting at about 900 RPM right about now. This is a 3-speed automatic, and one of the challenges that I've had with the water boxer as well as the conversion is that it likes to shift early. So first, second, and third. I'm already in the third gear by about 25-30 miles an hour, depending on the terrain. If I've really got my foot in the throttle, I might get the 35 in third gear. So what I'll typically do is that I'll just go ahead and I'll manually shift it. So right now I've got it in first, and I'll just move it. Sometimes I'll do first, second. Sometimes I'll do leave it in drive. Just depends on what traffic is and what road I'm on. So again, this might be a little bit noisy. So that's 4,000 RPM. We're doing about 22, 25. And yes, the rear brakes are squealing a little bit. All right, here we go. That was a shift at 5,000 RPM. Now, this particular engine, and I'm in second gear right now, going around some pretty decent curves. I live in some hilly area. One of the reasons why I wanted to do the conversion, because the water boxer I couldn't really maintain speed in these curves and in these mountains like I needed to. Still have it in second gear, running right at about 4,000 RPM. Now this engine with the K24A that I have, it redlines right at about 6,800. Alright, there's the shift to third. Pretty smooth. Now, do I shift from third to second when I'm going around curves? Not necessarily. It depends on the terrain. If it's up a hill, a pretty significant hill, then yeah, I might do that. But like what we're dealing with right now, we got a pretty good, almost 90-degree kind of curve going uphill. I like the exhaust note on this. Having the Walker muffler on it and having that little stainless steel exhaust tip makes a difference. When I didn't have the tip, it was just the muffler, and it was ending a little too was ending a little too soon, the physical outlet of it. And so what was happening was that a little bit of the noise was back feeding into the cabin, into the bodywork. Again, 5,000 RPM. Shipped at about 4,500 RPM. Hopefully the noise isn't too bad for you. I know this is probably not the greatest in the world, but hopefully it gets the point across. So right now I'm going along a little 2-lane blacktop close to home. It's got some bumps, it's got some potholes, things like that, so you're going to hear various noises on it, but for all the response, really good. One thing that I really like about having this conversion, it's not just going along a little 2-lane blacktop like this and being able to keep up. It's also with what happens out there on the interstate. I'm finally able to really compete with traffic in a certain way. At least I'm not going 55 and got it floored and don't feel like I've got any more left to give out of the engine like I did with the water boxer. Right now my foot is barely pressing in on the throttle. So we're doing about 55 miles an hour. A little bit of disclosure, the speedometer on this thing is about 6 to 7 miles per hour slower than what is actual speed. I've checked it with a GPS app on my phone, as well as a little GPS device. And yeah, it's a little bit slow. I need to work on that a little bit. But getting on the interstate with this thing, getting on ramps and trying to compete with traffic to get out in the flow of traffic, that really has made a big difference in the confidence of driving this. And just coming up hills, things like that, you know, I don't have to have my foot completely buried into it. It drives pretty comfortably. I'm really impressed with, you know, when I take my foot off, it does quieten down. Now it can get pretty rowdy, as you heard a little bit ago, going up to 5,000 on that first shift. But even in cruising like this, coming up to a 4-lane or a 4-way stop sign, it's not too bad. You know, it quietens down a pretty good bit. I'd like to get some insulation in here. Now, one thing too, while we're on the road and we're talking about it, something that's going to happen around wintertime is that I'm taking the van down to do suspension work. So I've done a couple of things here and there. I've put Coney Red shocks on the front, but Gabriel Hijacker air shocks on the rear, and everybody's trying to compete for a 4-way stop sign here. Hang on a second. All right, we're good. Now I kept it in drive, that's fine. As you can hear the shift point, it's really smooth. Really smooth. If it needs to get rowdy, it can get rowdy. If you want to drive it quiet and subdued, you can do that too. Anyway, getting back to that suspension build. So take the van down, start replacing components like the suspension bushings. I'd like to get new springs. I've already got upper ball joints installed in the past week. I'm going to get lowers put on. Kind of debating about the sway bar. I don't know if I want to maintain the original one and just go with the PowerFlex polyurethane suspension bushings, or if I want to go with the heavy duty one like what T3 Techniques has. I think that's a really good unit, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. A little pricey, but you know, I don't know. I may just get the PowerFlex bushings a while, see if I'm satisfied with drivability. But that's a big takeaway about this engine conversion, is the drivability. I feel incredibly confident, maybe erroneously so, about getting in the van, turning the key, and going where I need to go. Last week, I made my way from home up to Maggie Valley, North Carolina for the Eurofest show. And that's over some pretty significant mountains, going over into Franklin and then Dillsboro, Waynesville, on into Maggie Valley. Not only was that a bit of a good challenge for the conversion, I encountered one of the hardest rainstorms I've ever encountered so far having the conversion. And I was a little bit nervous about how my electrical system of the wiring harness that I built for this conversion and all the other electrical things were going to hold up, because it was some really serious weather, really heavy rain, but it survived and it worked out really well. So I'm quite pleased with that. This is one of the big hills here that I'm traveling, going back close to home. By the time I would get to this point, I would have to shift into second for the water boxer, and while I may be doing 55 and the flats down there, by the time I got to this point, I was probably pushing more like 45, 50, and then as this makes a left-hand turn up here and increases in elevation, I frequently would drop down to about 35. But right now we're keeping up with traffic really well. I'm not having to get into the throttle a whole lot. Let's talk about fuel mileage for a little bit now. I know some folks were hoping for improved fuel mileage. I certainly was. And fuel mileage so far, I'm getting about 17.7 miles per gallon. And I'm okay with that, because that has been consistent miles per gallon. There were times with the water boxer that I might get, I think the most MPGs that I got was probably close to 18, and that was driving from Mobile, Alabama to New Orleans, so relatively flat terrain. So I would anticipate that would be, better miles per gallon. But I've had the water boxer where it was getting about 13 too, up in the mountains in that same area around Maggie Valley where I was going. So I'm okay with 17.7. That's a pretty good number for me right now. I think what's hampering my mileage is the 3-speed automatic, as well as the differential, that just the gearing on the differential. And I don't want to change. Yeah, I could, if I was doing a lot of interstate highway driving like that, I might consider changing the gear ratio and the differential. But with as much hill country and mountains that I like to drive the van and go camp in, I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it. Plus that's a pretty expensive endeavor to do that. That's another thing to talk about, the what's coming up in the near future. I've got a spare automatic transaxle that I'm going to rebuild. So we're back in the garage. You can probably hear that the low-speed radiator fan kicked on. Another thing that has been added to this is a automatic transmission cooler. It's a Durail 13900, has an electric fan on it, kicks on at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, I think is the temp sensor on it. So it'll kick on. When I shut off the van, so we'll hear the radiator fan, it's still running there, and also that transmission cooler fan. So anyway, that's a pretty quick and dirty drivability kind of video, and hope you like it. And if you do, please like, share, and subscribe. And you know anybody who likes this kind of content, then by all means bring them to the party. As always, appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.